hello. Hello, hello, hello. It is me. I am back. Oh, guess what? Most views that I've had. Let me go segue, but it's about the reading thing. Okay. I'm just gonna count them as people viewed the whole thing, but I can see like when people stop seeing or stop watching my videos. But my first video on the first reading video has 21 views. And I'm just like, man, last time I checked there was 16. Nice. I don't know how that happened, but nice. I mean, I can check like YouTube Studio like where people usually leave off. Oh crap, I'm still recording. So people probably saw what they just saw. Which wasn't that much. It was just me opening Chrome and then going to YouTube. But I guess I'll do that later because it's weird. But yeah, I mean, I could just download YouTube Studio on my phone, but I'm just like, that's too much work. But I guess maybe I should. I don't know, maybe. Is it worth it? Is it really worth it? No, I do not want premium. No, 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 no. YouTube Studio. You know what? Fuck it, I'll install it. Yeah, I want to get those sweet analytics, man. Alright, yes, open. Engage file. Okay, get started. Okay. Just time. Real-time views in the last 48 hours. 4 views. Oh, cool. Someone watched. Cool. They tell you here watch time. Average watch time. One more subscriber. No, I don't think anyone else is subscribed. Or have they? No. Well, I think it's very cool. Thank you to everyone who has watched. Oh, it's 24 now. Hell yeah. I need to keep on uploading videos, but I haven't been able to do that. I know. Thank you. I am very proud of myself too. My channel. 2 subscribers. It's okay. I don't really care. Alright. But here we are. And it took me only 4 minutes, like it usually does, to start reading. Beautiful. Yeah, I figured I would read today because I know that I want you to get as good sleep as possible, even though I know you're probably going to go to bed at like 12. Maybe I'll read on Thursday too, but I'm just like, I want to have my hair done by Thursday night. I'm just going to straighten it, but straightening it takes a lot of work. So yeah, I was like debating whether like should I just leave it how it is, but then like it doesn't get curly the way I want it to get curly, and know. I want to look nice for the wedding. No, I don't think you have. My hair is relatively straight when we take a shower. After we take a shower, but after that, it's just kind of frizzy and blows up. So yeah, you'll see me with some nice hair. Okay. So, we last left off was that May escaped from the pirates because there were vampires. Cool. Nice. I like how they updated Discord. It's nice. Anyway, yeah, last off, May escaped from the pirates that were going to turn her in, and she took off to the Pit of Despair. Because I think she thought her friends might be there. I think that's what... At least I think that's what she thought. Okay. Wait, let me just see how much I want to read. Sorry. Okay. I'll just read until like 10:30, so like 2 hours should be good. Maybe cut a little bit more down to like... Yeah, we're fine. We're fine. Okay. It only took me 7 minutes. Nice. Beautiful. Okay. Chapter 11. The Pit of Despair. May and Kitty were sliding downward and around a dark basin, like water being flushed down a toilet. Then they were falling through the air. May wondered how badly it was going to hurt when she landed. They fell and fell until the opening was only a pinprick of light, and then she hit something and bounced, and hit it and bounced again. She couldn't see what it was because of a pitch black. She couldn't see what it was because it was pitch black all around her, but it felt like a trampoline. Eventually, the bounces became smaller and smaller until she was laying on her face on the mesh netting. Kitty flopped across her head. May rolled over and rolled off, landing with a thunk on the ground. She stood and looked around. Everything was black, but for a rectangular booth ahead, lit from within by an eerie blue light. A figure stood inside the booth, also glowing with blue light, very still. She had on a moth-eaten cardigan sweater. Hold on, I wasn't paying attention to what I was reading. Oops. She looked around. She stood and looked around. Everything was black, but for a rectangular booth up ahead, lit from within by an eerie blue light. A figure stood inside the booth, also glowing with blue light, very still. She had on a moth-eaten cardigan sweater with a white-collared shirt underneath. Her short hair was curled and frosted, and she wore glasses. Is May Bird in rock bottom? She might. Warily, May drifted close enough to see that she wore a name tag, Edith. She was looking not at May, but off into the darkness to her right, as if she were bored. May hesitated, then cleared her throat. Nice. Very nice. Nice. Okay. Uh, May hesitated. They cleared her throat. Um, excuse me? Slowly, as if on a wheel, the woman turned toward her. She was missing one eye, and a worm crawled out of the hole where her missing eye had been. She said nothing, apparently waiting for May to speak. May curled her fingers together, trying to buck up her courage. She was still reeling from the news about Pumpkin. I was hoping this was the Pit of Despair amusement park? Slowly, as if it took all the effort in the world, the woman looked down at a roll of tickets sitting on the counter. Oh, May warbled, digging into her pockets. Oh, how much? The woman only stared at her blankly. May remembered the money she'd picked up in Balmorte and pulled it out of her pocket. She pushed it across, hoping it was enough. The woman stared at it for a moment. Then her crumbling, withered hand slowly ripped one of the tokens from the wheel and pushed it back to her throat. Not to her throat. Then her crumbling, withered hands slowly ripped one of the tickets from the wheel and pushed it back at her through the slot. Thank you. May looked around at the darkness, then back at the woman questioningly. The woman let out a long sigh and then turned in the direction she'd been looking before. Now that May looked harder, she could just make out what looked like a black velvet curtain there. She gulped, and she and Cody exchanged a glance, and they walked in that direction. The curtain opened slowly before them, but nothing was on the other side but darkness. She stepped inside and let the curtain fall shut behind her. Far, far above, maybe 20 stories over her head. A red light began to flash. A moment later, a deafening buzzer went off all around them, shaking the ground beneath their feet. There were loud clickings and rumblings high up in the air, and in the red glow, May could now see she was indeed in an enormous pit, lined with hundreds of tiers going up farther than the eye could see. Along the tiers were doors, and each door was opening. May started to back up, but suddenly she was being lifted from underneath, and she fell down into a floating wooden coffin. Grabbing Kitty, she tried to scramble out, but in a moment they were too high to leap. Figures began to emerge from the doors, and it took a moment to see that they were mechanical, made of metal, moving like the animatronic Santa Clauses Bridie McDrummy kept on her long and hog wallow. There were thousands of them, spirits dressed like undertakers and women with hair full of cobwebs, white faces, and darkly circled eyes. They floated off their tiers, hung by gossamer strings, with an unseen ceiling, and spun all over the place, executing languid flips and circles in the air, all around May, singing in haunting, mournful voices. Okay, and now I have to sing for this part, so bear with me. When things are just too good, or you're missing a good scare, we'll set your knees to knockin' deep in the pit of If you're up for feeling down or you want to raise your hair, look no further than the realm's top thrills, deep in the pit of despair. Come inside, forget your cares. It's worse in here than what's out there. Plus, we've got funnel cakes to spare, deep in the pit of despair. The coffin lifted them higher and higher, and in another in another moment, it was like every bit of electricity in the universe zapped into life all at once, lighting up the immense darkness and revealing a great amusement park beneath them. It was enormous, dazzling, and dark, glowing with eerie purple, green, and blue lights. The coffin began to move swiftly downward into the thick of the scene before them, zipping along above the candlelit cobblestone pathway that wound its way up through the park. Mechanical spirits, still singing, circled the coffin, holding glowing signs that said, "The Grand Tour." Rides zoomed and soared on either side of them, giant slides sprinkled here and giant slides sprinkled here and there, reached up so high May couldn't even see where they began. They passed a gaping they passed a gaping cave to the left, a crooked sign dangling above it, glowing with the words "Tunnel of Horror." To the right was a huge house of decayed splendor, its front terrace sagging into the ground, its shutters dangling from the roof from the windows, or lying on the floor, and screams of terror issuing from inside. The sign by the railings read, "Murderous Mansion." They drifted past "Night on Banshee Mountain," a mountain that arched crookedly overhead, fire shooting from crevices near the top, and then past "House of Vampires," the entrance of Vampire's Mouth standing wide open. There were waterfalls of what smelled like slurpy soda, rusty silver strands selling putrid pops and skull cakes, and a rainbow of colors ranging from blood red to rotten brown, and countless shops bursting with souvenirs, stuffed mummies, chainsaws, shackles imprinted with "Pit of Despair" in bright letters. But all through the ride, but through all the rides were, but though all the, but though all the rides were in motion and the shack bars were brimming with goodies, there wasn't a spirit in sight. It was completely empty. May scanned the ground for a glimpse of a single soul. The cobblestone pathway beneath them branched into other pathways that led to the that led to the rides, and here and there, the ground was interrupted with excuse me. Sorry, I got distracted. Um, the cobblestone way beneath them branched into other pathways that led to the rides, and here and there the ground was interrupted with pits marked with arrows pointing downward, and signs such as "This way for an unfortunate surprise," or "Coffin candy down here if you dare." They crossed over a metal mummy-filled swamp, past a collection of rockets promising excursions to view nearby stars, a boat basin at the side of the stick streamway that May assumed must be for all the visitors who would normally be arriving from all over the realm. But there was no one. Up ahead, May could see the black curtain where she'd entered, and she realized they had been going in a big circle. The, the spirits in the air began to slow down their dancing and flipping, singing lower and lower. their voices beginning to wane. The coffin slowed to a stop, and the spirits floated back into the doorways above, leaving mournfully before the doors slid shut. May and Summer Kitty looked around, and then then May scooped the cat into her arms and climbed out of the coffin. As soon as she landed, a map floated into her hands. A map floated into her hands, seemingly from nowhere, showing the different rides, each lit a different eerie color. "What's next?" it asked. May stared. "I don't know," she muttered out loud. "Perhaps the murderous mansion?" it suggested. May shook her head. If she wasn't here for Pumpkin, why was she here? Oh yeah, that's right. She thought Pumpkin was hiding over here. That's why she went to the Pit of Despair. Taking a deep breath to keep her tears at bay, she drifted onto one of the cobblestone pathways, finding herself in a grove of dead, forbidding trees, whose limbs seemed to reach out as if to grab them. Maybe there were others. Maybe the knaves had been lying. She wasn't ready to let herself crumble yet. "If anyone's here," May muttered, gazing around. "Where are they hiding?" Aside from the whir of the rides and the flash of the lights, nothing moved or made a sound. May sighed, looking down at her map again. The tunnel of horror had begun to flash. May climbed into the waiting boat at the mouth of the tunnel of horror and put Kitty beside her on the bench. The water beneath them was dark, obscuring whatever might be lurking inside. As soon as they were both sitting, the boat lurched into motion. May held onto Kitty tightly as they were swallowed by darkness, listening to the drips of the cave around them. May's fingers scratched nervously behind Kitty's ears. He wriggled out of her grasp, his green eyes giving her an annoyed look in the dark. They waited for what would jump out of the dark to scare them. A whispering began all around them, terrifying, low, and menacing. Out of the corner of May's eyes, she caught a light to the right, and down an alley she saw the sign, "Horrific hamburgers. Fill up before you freak out." The vaguest sound of laughter issued from behind the door of the building. Was it a recording or actual spirits? May wondered. The boat stopped momentarily. She hesitated a moment while it lurched into motion again, and then she grabbed Kitty and hopped out. The door to Horrific Hamburgers was heavy, and it opened with a creak as May pushed with all her strength. She nearly stumbled back when she saw the room full of spirits that waited on the other side. They were all sitting around at various tables and along a mahogany bar, watching Holovision. There was a woman in a black suit holding the hand of a young brown-skinned girl in a pink party dress. And a couple in colorful clothes, and beads sat hand in hand. The one hand was not connected to a body. A girl with long black hair, wearing a sari, nodded at her gravely. A few bobbish misshapen ghosts, with horns and big teeth and bulbous noses and blue lips, stared at Somber Kitty and nudged each other, and then turned their attention back to the Holovision. The filmy bartender, who had a handlebar mustache above his blue lips, and wore an apron and cuffs, grinned over at her. "Pull up a stool, young miss. Have a Slurpee soda." He gazed at Somber Kitty. May floated up to the bar. The bartender poured her a glass of the slimy and putrid smelling drink. She took it politely into her hands, but couldn't bring herself to sip it. She had never thought to wonder what was in a Slurpee soda, but it smelled like worm pee and moth breath. Where are you flee- Where are you fleeing from? Excuse me? May asked. The bartender smiled at her sadly. Ether? Northern regions? Seaside? Fleeing? Which Clevelville did they turn your town into? Mine was 73. All my friends. He trailed off sadly, turning his attention to a glass mug, which he began to polish. So is this a hideout? May asked. He looked at her. He looked at her askance, clearly surprised that she didn't already know. One of the last in the realm, long as none of the dark spirits find us. He sighed, laying down the mug and picking up another one. We're making the best of it. He glanced again at Somber Kitty. Hold on. He glanced again at Somber Kitty, who'd wrapped himself around May's neck like a scarf. We get all kinds, but it's not every day we see a cat spirit. They were the first to go, you know. May knew. Cats had been the first animals banished from the Ever After, because the evil black shuck dogs were deathly afraid of them. Now all the animals, even the shuck dogs, were gone, but no one knew where. May took it in. The room full of misplaced spirits hiding in the belly of the tunnel of terror, and they were the lucky ones. It made her want to cry. Actually, I came here looking for my friend, May said, her throat starting to knot up. But May couldn't bring herself to say it. She cleared her throat. Seeing the tears welling in her eyes, the bartender pulled a decayed, hole-ridden tissue from his vest pocket and handed it to her. Hey, you're that girl. May looked up. It was the girl with the sorry who'd spoken. A few spirits looked from the hollow vision in her direction again, curious. Oh, yeah, another one said. It's that one who's supposed to save the world from certain doom. Who? Mayberg or something. Bird, May said. May Bird. Oh, yeah. A few spirits eyed her curiously, then turned back to the hollow vision. No wonder there's no hope, someone muttered darkly, but May couldn't see who. She looked down at herself, self-consciously, taller, but still as skinny as ever. She felt like apologizing for herself. She hadn't turned out to be much of a warrior. Don't mind them, the bartender said listlessly. They're just depressed. It's because we know Cleveland will find us here one day, too. There's nowhere to hide anymore. But why aren't you trying to do anything about it? May asked. Someone, maybe the same someone as before, laughed. The bartender scowled in their general direction. Maybird. Ha! A spirit muttered. Well, the Book of the Dead's been wrong before, someone else added. It has? May sputtered. Several spirits laughed. Sure, you don't think the future's set in stone, do you? It hasn't even happened yet, one explained. The bartender interrupted. Now, saying something about looking for someone. May shook her head, still absorbing what the spirit had said about the Book of the Dead. Could it have been wrong? Was it possible? Maybe you're getting bullied. Please realize it. No, self-blame is the correct answer. What are you talking about? No room for self-compassion in this story. No. I'm kidding. Please do not take that to heart. Okay. Anyway. Okay, let me at least drink some water first. Because I need to stay hydrated. Okay. Could it have been wrong? Was it possible? It's just, she said dazedly. I came here looking for my friend Pumpkin, but it was as if May had shot an arrow through the middle of the room. Everyone looked over at once. Pumpkin? The singer? The bartender asked. May nodded, taken aback. You're friends with the Pumpkin? The girl in the sari said. May nodded again. Now everyone in the bar was hopping out of their chairs, circling around her, reaching out to touch her and shake her hand. I'd love an autograph, someone said. You don't have a lock of his hair you're willing to sell by any chance, do you? Sightings are very rare. May was befuddled. Sightings? A few spirits nodded. It's a shame, but he likes his privacy. But, May said, her heart twisting sharply. But I guess you haven't heard. He was turned into nothing. Everyone paused, very shocked. Then a roar of laughter swept the room. Oh, he's good, someone said, nodding. Typical Pumpkin. May, bewildered, swept Somber Kitty into her arms, nervous, wondering if these spirits were lunatics. What do you mean? Do you believe everything you read on the paper? The girl in the pink party dress asked, grinning. Pumpkin's always spreading rumors to put off his fans. A few months ago, it was that he ran off with Mary Washington to Elysian Acres. Before that, he was abducted by aliens. Huh, aliens, said one woman with a knife sticking out of her head. Everyone knows aliens don't exist. Pumpkin lives, someone shouted. You're all fooling yourselves, the bartender interrupted. Pumpkin got turned into nothing. I saw the picture myself. The half of the spirits who hadn't spoken up seemed to agree, and they nodded. May felt like she was being twisted into a million shapes. The hope she'd been beginning to feel plummeted again. It's all wishful thinking, one of the blobbish ghosts boomed. Spirits will make up anything because they want to believe it. I heard a rumor just the other day he'd hidden himself in the karaoke lounge over on the far side of this very park. Several spirits laughed. The bartender smiled his sad smile. Of course we don't dare venture out of the tunnel of terror. Never know when the ghouls might wander down here into the pit. But May, Kitty at her heels, was already pushing open the door. And that is the end of chapter 11. 11. Oh boy. Oh boy. What's gonna happen? You probably know what's gonna happen, but oh boy, what's gonna happen? Alright, chapter 12. The White Knuckle Karaoke Lounge. Live music! Refreshments! May stood and stared at the entrance to the White Knuckle Karaoke Lounge, which she had found using her map. It was perched on a slight rise on a dark, empty hill at the far end of the park. She swallowed, then pushed her way through the double doors. Hold on, I need to put on. I just got the intense feeling of wanting to put on some chapstick. So I'm gonna put on some chapstick. Because hydration of every part of your body is a necessity. Stay hydrated. Make sure your lips are always moisturized because you do not want a cracked lips. Those hurt. And if you're a psychopath like me and you bite the little cracky bits, then you will bleed. So do not do that. Hydrate your lips. Okay. Back to the story. Yeah. May stood and stared at the entrance to the White Knuckle Karaoke Lounge, which she found using her map. It was perched on a slight rise on a dark, empty hill at the far end of the park. She swallowed, then pushed her way through the double doors into a dimly lit hallway. It stretched into the darkness, framed records hanging on the walls, all spinning and giving off soft music in countless languages. Moments later, she emerged into a smoky room. A handful of spirits sat in red upholstered chairs facing a small black stage, one of them smoldering as if he'd just been on fire. The stage before them was lit by a single spotlight, and in the single spotlight, on a moldy red couch, face down, lay a lanky figure singing into the microphone. All by myself. The voice was mournful and painful to the ears, resembling the sound of a dying cow. Don't want to be dead by myself anymore. Sorry, my improvisation of that was horrible. But I don't care. May stood up, rooted on the spot. Sorry, I'm getting distracted again. May stood rooted to the spot. Mew? Kitty whispered breathlessly. Hearing Kitty, the figure's head perked up to the right, just slightly. It sat up, swiveling halfway. May rushed forward. At that moment, she felt herself grabbed by the elbows and yanked backward. Two spirits in red velvet suits had jumped out of their seats and had her by either arm. Summer Kitty leaped to her side and sank its teeth deep into one of the spirit's ankles. He howled. Pumpkin! May yelled, struggling. The figure on stage turned all the way around now, still holding the microphone to its lips. A large, lopsided, pumpkin-shaped head, all white and pasty, the big black eyes, The crooked mouth would have been would have been terrifying to someone who didn't know the creature they belonged to. Pumpkin's yellow Pumpkin's yellow hair flopped as he looked at May in astonishment. Pumpkin, it's me! May yelled. But, but he's not real or something. Who knows, man? Maybe he's not real. Maybe it's a conspiracy. Maybe it's fuck, what are they called? A pumpkin impersonator. Pumpkin impersonator. And pumpkinator. Yes. Yes. I love it. Sorry, I was waiting for people to stop talking. And to go to the rooms. Alright. I'm sorry if that sounds bad. I just get really embarrassed. Okay. Okay. Pumpkin, it's me! May yelled. For a moment, pure joy crossed Pumpkin's face, his crooked mouth widening into a ghastly smile. But the moment it did, it turned downward into an angry frown that he directed first at her, then at Kitty, then off into nowhere, as if he'd forgotten they were standing there. With a flick of his finger, he summoned the smoking ghost from where he had risen to the edge of the stage, and whispered something into his ear. The ghost nodded and straightened up, addressing May with thin blue lips under a thick black mustache. He says, "Look what the cat dragged in." May looked at Pumpkin. He crossed his arms looked off and looked off backstage, where as if he were bored. He began plucking at the spilt ends of the spilt ends. He began plucking at the split ends of his yellow tuft of hair. May was speechless. She opened and closed her mouth a few times in Pumpkin's direction, and then in the direction of the smoldering ghost. Then sputtered, "Who are you?" The ghost, his mustache twisting. You fucking bet he is. Man, Pumpkin reminds me of me sometimes. The ghost, his mustache twitching, straightened his blackened necktie. "I'm Pumpkin's publicist, Avril." "Your publicist?" May yelled to Pumpkin, baffled. Pumpkin turned to Avril and whispered something, and then crossed his arms again and looked away. Pumpkin Pumpkin has asked you that you direct all questions to me. Pumpkin, May groaned. What? Why? Pumpkin seemed to consider whether to answer or not, and then he whispered something to Avril. He says, in case you don't remember, you abandoned him to a life of loneliness and sorrow. May's heart sank. She hung her head. Tell him I'm sorry, but I'm back now. Pumpkin sighed loudly, then whispered. He says he's almost been captured by ghouls lots of times, and you weren't around to help. May searched for some way to reply, to defend herself. But he wanted me to go. He said he hoped I'd never come back. Pumpkin seemed to consider this for a long moment, and then another long whispered. Yep, she was a living person. She needed to go back to the living. Pumpkin seemed to consider this for a long moment, and then another whisper. And Avril turned to May. He says he thought he meant it at the time, but he didn't. May didn't know what to say to that. Pumpkin shot a glance at her, and his lopsided forehead wrinkled. He smoothed out the tuft. He smoothed out the tuft on top of his head thoughtfully, and then he leaned over and whispered again. He says, how does he know he won't leave him again? He is a baby, but he's a good baby. He's best baby. He's best baby. He's the worst fucking baby. No, his best baby. May bit her lip, hopeful. That's just how he is. Anyway. May bit her lip, hopeful. I don't know, Pumpkin. I'll just do my best. I'll try my best to never let you down again. Pumpkin looked interested now. He stared at her and mumbled something. He says you look different. He says you don't look like a little girl anymore. Because she couldn't raise her hands, May shrugged her shoulders helplessly. She suddenly felt tall and gangly and unwieldy, perched there on her coltish legs, her long black hair tangled. I grew up, she said to Pumpkin apologetically, her voice creaking a little. And well, her voice cracked. I also died. Pumpkin gave a small jerk. A big tear formed at the ridge of his left eye and slowly dribbled down his cheek. He nodded to the two ghosts holding May's arms, and they let her go. May hesitated for a moment, and then, swooping like a dodo bird, 'cause he's a dodo bird, and then swooping like a dodo bird, Pumpkin sprang forward, flinging his long arms wide open. May made up the distance, and in a moment she was in his cold embrace, being hugged so tight she felt like she might shrink into nothing. Pumpkin pulled back and gazed at her, his smile huge, hugged her again, pulled back again, and then he let out a little squeal as he scooped Somber Kitty into his arms. Mwah, 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 mwah. He covered Somber Kitty in kisses, and Somber Kitty pretended to be disgusted, though he obviously liked it. He licked Pumpkin's nose, and Pumpkin squeezed him tight. Finally, May pulled back and gave him a nervous, hopeful look. She was almost as tall as his chest now. Pumpkin, she gushed, hardly able to catch her breath. Where are the others? Where's Bee and Fabio and Lucius? What about Isabella and Arista? Pumpkin's smile descended, once again, into a deep frown. He looked around at his publicists and bodyguards as if they were suddenly in the way. He sighed theatrically. Where does the star go to get some privacy around here? But the look he gave May was anything but theatrical, and it filled her heart with dread. And that is the end of chapter 12? Yeah, chapter 12. All right. Ooh, baby, what's gonna happen? Ooh, baby. BB. What's gonna happen? Hey, BB, what's gonna happen? Okay. Chapter. Yeah, I have. Yeah, I think I'll read 2 more chapters. If I can do that. If I do that, I'll be good. Chapter 13. Chapter 13. The Lorelei? Or the Lorelei? I think it's gonna be Lorelei. Or Lorelei. It's Lorelei. Oh, so should it be Lorelei? With a lay? Or Lee? Or Lorelei? Yeah, Lorelei? I like Laura Lee. Or Lorelei. Because I don't want to get this wrong, because I really think it's a pretty word, and I want to pronounce said pretty word. Lorelei. Oh, it's a place, I guess. Oh, Lorelei. Okay. So, I guess it's in Germany, and it's pronounced Lorelei. Lorelei. Okay, I'll pronounce it that way. Lorelei. I'll just have to keep on reminding myself it's Ray. Laura Ray. Lorelei. Laura, not... Jesus Christ, now I just got myself mixed up. Lorelei. Lay. The lay of the land. Lorelei. Actually, no, I'm just gonna... Pronunciation. No, I think it is Lorelei. Never mind, I think you're right. Because the first thing it said is Lorelei. Which I like that too. Okay. Gotta lie. Laura lie. Laura is lie. Laura and then lie. Lorelai. There we go. I like that pronunciation too. Okay. Now we've got that all figured out. Lorelai. Alright, chapter 13, the Lorelai. So the spirits are just hiding here, waiting for the end of the ever after? May asked. Pumpkinhead had led May across the amusement park through a series of camouflage doors, hidden in the dead trees, to a gate behind the giant vampire head, where it couldn't be seen from the sky ride. They've lost hope, Pumpkin said. I guess everyone has. He spoke quietly into a small black box. Pumpkin is the best. And the gate creaked open. May watched in amazement, then followed him through. They came to another gate where he held his face up to a tiny camera, perched on the nearest flat tree. A laser shot out of it and scanned his eyeball. Match, a computerized voice said. May's mouth dropped open. I had it built last year, Pumpkin said, replying to her expression as they drifted on to a third gate. You'd be amazed what you have to do to keep out of the paparazzi. Thought it'd be a good place to hide from the public eye. And also, go on lots of rides. I never thought I'd be hiding out here for good. A tiny, sooty creature with pointy ears, a miner's cap attached to its head, floated out of the keyhole of the gate. What is Tommyknocker? And Pumpkin said proudly. What is Tommyknocker? Pumpkin said proudly. They're very rarely seen or caught. This is one of the few we have in captivity. Password? The Tommyknocker squeaked. Hold on. I want to see if this is just a made-up thing or is it Tommyknocker folklore. Oh, I guess, yeah, it's a folklore thing. Closely related to the Irish leprechaun. Cool. Anyway. Password? The Tommyknocker squeaked. Pumpkin looked at May, ready and impressed, and then screwed up his face to be very serious, and then said in a thick British accent, The rain in Spain falls mainly on the plain. Hopefully that was British enough for everyone. The Tommyknocker bowed, pressing a button that opened the gate. Welcome home, your famousness. As soon as he thought they weren't looking, he set about taking off the hinges of the gate with a tiny screwdriver. Somber Kitty curled in Somber Kitty, curled in Pumpkin's arms, let out a low growl. I have lots of problems with him, Pumpkin said, especially with knocking on my walls at night when I'm trying to sleep. He scowled at the Tommyknocker's shenanigans and then his face softened. But he's just so cute. May followed him a few steps forward, then paused. Before them was a white house, rambling and crooked. It took May's breath away. Hold on, sorry. May followed him a few steps forward, then paused. Before them was a white house, rambling and crooked. It took May's breath away. It's. I had them make a replica, Pumpkin said, sighing. Do you like it? Pumpkin, May breathed, taking it in. A lump of homesickness formed in her throat. Why? The house was an exact duplicate of White Moss Manor. Its wide front porch, its dark windows, even its sagging lines. Pumpkin didn't answer May's question. He only led her up to the stairs of the porch and through the front door. Of course, I had to make a few adjustments, Pumpkin said, flipping a switch so that a disco ball descended just in front of them, multicolored lights spinning across their faces. They floated into what would have been the foyer. It was actually a huge room, full of gleaming but yellowed white vinyl furniture and bone white carpet stained all over. Video games lined one wall, with names like Tomb Escape, Zombies on Ice, and Evasion of the Exorcists. There was a foosball table in the corner, a trampoline, and giant art prints of Pumpkin everywhere. The walls covered in old lame were dominated by awards cases and 17 huge silver spook awards. He led her into another room, full of bubbles coming up from a built-in bubble machine in the ceiling. Here there were 4 Slurpee soda machines and chairs made of glassed in fish tanks, with mechanical piranhas swimming about inside. That's imported mummy gauze, Pumpkin pointed out to the tattered curtains. The windows afforded $1 million view of night on Banshee Mountain. He looked at May eagerly, expectantly. It's really great. May tried to sound as enthusiastic as possible. It was a little over the top of her head. Pumpkin grinned hugely. He motioned for her to sit down on one of the piranha chairs, and then He motioned for her to sit down on one of the piranha chairs, and then he sat on her lap, cuddling Kitty close to his arms, until the cat finally leaped down. May could feel the piranhas trying to nibble her rear through the upholstery. Somber Kitty swatted at them from the floor. So, May said. So, Pumpkin said, swinging his legs as if to say, so what? You were going to tell me? May ventured softly. Where are the others? Yep, Pumpkin nodded, still bright, his eyes wide and vacant as if he was trying to process what he was about to say. And then he flopped over, burying his head in his arms on May's lap. First thing, he cried. May shifted, alarmed, and tried to keep his elbows from digging into her legs. Pumpkin? He sat up and sniffled. And then they... He sniffled again and flopped back down. His tears soaked right through May's pajama pants. Pumpkin? She tapped him on the shoulder. I can't understand what you're saying. Pumpkin sat up, gasping. He rubbed his nose holes with the He rubbed. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. um, Pumpkin sat up, gasping. He rubbed his nose holes with the shredded cuff of his sleeve. This was why he wanted to talk in private, May now realized. He flopped over again. Finally, she gave in just to scratching his back and letting him cry, letting him take all the time he needed. Eventually, he recovered himself and began to talk in sniffly, low tones. What happened? May asked tremulously. She wasn't sure she was ready to hear the answer. Pumpkin gathered himself slowly and began his story. After you left and we got out of South Place, okay, we split up for a while. Beatrice and her mom went to live with the colony of the undead, and Fabio went with them. Lucius went off exploring the realm. I went back to Belmorte. Pumpkin swallowed. Then when I got back to Beehive House, there was a parchment posted on the door saying I'd been stripped of haunting duties. Pumpkin looked like he was staring right through the floor, sadly. I couldn't come haunt your house anymore. After that, I was pretty depressed. I just lolled around without much purpose, doing my choice for Arista. I watched a lot of daytime TV, took up croquet, was really bad at it. She pulled a very poorly crocheted, crochet, not croquet, crochet. Took up crochet, was really bad at it. He pulled a very poorly crocheted scarf out from underneath his tattered shirt and flashed it at her. But the weird thing was, sometimes in town, spirits would ask for my autograph. I didn't know why at first, but then I'd go to a restaurant and people would ask me to sing, and eventually it became out that a bunch of spirits had heard of me. Pumpkin brightened. It was those goblins we sang for up by the Petrified Pass, spreading the word, telling everyone about this spectacular talent I have. He shook his head, amazed with himself. Kitty let out a sigh and looked at May. Pumpkin, May prodded gently. Pumpkin blinked back to reality and cleared her throat. Well, I started doing small gigs in Belmorte, but the shows were sold out immediately. He sighed theatrically. You know how that goes. So I got a manager and he said I should move to Ether, where theater was really happening. I saw your flyer, May interjected. I've had a good run, Pumpkin replied casually. But then he leaned his chin onto his fist. Was it my good side? How many did you see? Pumpkin, the others? May sat up. Right. Well, turns out Lucius was there too now, with Fabio and Beatrice, who'd left Isabella with the colony for safekeeping. Seems they felt useless, hiding up at the colony. We got a loft together at Glosso. Beatrice took in mending. Fabio frequented the cafes and worked on his poetry. Lucius, well, liked to put our underwear in the freezer, and then Pumpkin's spooky face took on a haunted look. Pumpkin, what happened? Pumpkin stared off into space. The dark spirits took over. More and more arrived every day. They started taking ghosts away in shackles and replacing all the nice little shops in Ether with chain stores. Horrible, horrible chain stores. He shook his head. With the worst, cheapest stuff. He looked dazed for a moment, then focused again. We escaped to Belmorte, but Arista... Pumpkin's lips trembled. Was gone. I didn't know where, and I left that message for you in the dust in case you ever came back. He gazed off. We headed north, but not before... What? I saw him once. Bo Cleaville? I mean, really up close. Not like what happened in South Place. He came to watch over the spirits being taken away. You'll never find me next to him again. Never. It's like looking at pure emptiness. May knew what he meant. She had had more run-ins with Bo Cleaville than any spirit would ever wish. She hoped never to have one again. That was about the time Lucius had his idea. Pumpkin finally went on. What idea? To sneak into the World of the Living Research Center in Fiery Fork. He had some ideas he'd read about in ghost stories when he was a kid, and sure enough, one of them turned out to be true. They have a trans-dimensional phone that they've been working on for years. May felt the hair stand up on the back of her neck. That was when we started calling you for help. Yes! May nearly shouted. I got that call. Pumpkin, I heard you. My mom said it was the wires being crossed by... Pumpkin nodded solemnly. And then May had another thought. But Pumpkin, that was only weeks ago. Where are the others? They were here? They spotted us on our way out of this research center, he said, barely above her whisper, talking to the floor. The goals, we all ran, but they caught the others. I was the only one who got free. Pumpkin's shoulders sank, like he wanted to shrink too. But they didn't bother as much about me. Because I'm just a house ghost. They figure I'm harmless. May's heart broke for Pumpkin. He looked sheepish and small, sitting in his special piranha chair. House ghosts were the lowest of the low in the hierarchy of the ever after, dimmer than all the rest, their existences full of house chores. But I followed them. Didn't really do any good. But I saw the goals load them up onto a ship docked on the Dead Sea and set sail, going northeast. I'm sure, like all the other captured souls, they're probably thousands of miles away by now. May reached for his hand, which had flopped down limply at his side. I couldn't do anything to save them. I guess I am harmless. That's okay, Pumpkin. You shouldn't have been alone like that. She squeezed his fingers. I'm so glad you're here, Pumpkin said, squeezing back, and then he looked like he wanted to say something more. But I'm really sorry that you know, he made the gesture of a knife across the throat that meant died. May went silent, plucking at her fingernails. What's your mom gonna do? He asked. May shook her head, her eyes filled with tears. Pumpkin put his hand on her shoulder. Like sands through the hourglass, he said solemnly, his own eyes watering. So are the days of our lives. Oh, Pumpkin, May said, smiling in spite of herself. Hey, he said, brightening just slightly above, brightening just slightly, putting on a brave face. Do you want to see something cool? It was a gift from Queen Elizabeth, Pumpkin said as they floated through the long hall hung with all sorts of keys, Summer Kitty trailing behind them. Big fan. She loves musicals. What are all these for? May asked. Oh! Pumpkin waggled a hand in the air. Lots of mayors gave me keys to their cities. I've got 'em all. Skullcross, Bogey Bend. They drifted past a home movie theater and several parlors, all decorated in different themes. An Arabian Nights room, a Titanic room, a country and western room. There was a private telebooth for sending telepathic messages across the realm, and a room full of gifts Pumpkin had been given by adoring fans. Lots of stuffed mummies, dead flowers, two fluorescent pink hearses, a bright orange raft painted with Pumpkin's face. Apparently, everyone knew he loved to swim. Um, Hundreds of packs of Goldie gum. What about the Shakespeare Song and Dance Review? May asked. Becoming a member of the Shakespeare Song and Dance Review was Pumpkin's greatest dream, one he had held for over 100 years. But Pumpkin stopped dead in his tracks and turned toward her sadly. I I auditioned last year. Then they came then they came when they came traveling through ether. He nibbled on the edges of his long white fingers thoughtfully. Everybody thought I was a shoo-in. They said they'd call me if I made it, but oh, Pumpkin, May said, lowering her voice respectfully. They didn't call? That's impossible. Pumpkin barely had the strength to shake his head. I guess I just wasn't Shakespeare caliber. May wrapped her arms around him and squeezed him tight. They don't know what they're missing, she told him. Maybe if I had the chance to audition one more time. Pumpkin's voice trailed off. They both knew there'd be no more auditions for the Shakespeare Song and Dance Review anytime soon. May couldn't help think of her own dreams. They all required being alive, but she and Pumpkin had each other now. That was something. I have to keep it in the pool out back, Pumpkin said, changing the subject and floating forward again. What? The gift. Pumpkin, what is it? What is it? Pumpkin reached the end of the hall and opened a creaky door onto a wilted lawn. May gasped, swirling, ducking, and diving into the pool was a beautiful, glowing woman with long brown hair and an orange bikini. Is that a water demon? Pumpkin laughed. No! Psh! Of course not! He rolled his eyes. Like I would have a water demon in my pool. She's a Lorelei. He shrugged. They lure sailors to their deaths. Distantly related to water demons. Great swimmers, of course. Immune to Dead Sea water, even. Whoa, May said, staring back at the Lorelei. She looked too nice to lure sailors to their deaths. She gave May a dazzling white smile. Her name's Mona Lisa. You want to pet her? Reluctantly, May followed him down the poolside. The Lorelei blew water into the air in a thin arc and floated to the side of the pool, staring at Pumpkin expectantly with big glossy eyes. She has pretty eyes, don't you think? As the Lorelei fluttered her eyelashes at him, Pumpkin blushed. May couldn't believe it. Pumpkin had fallen in love with a creature that wanted to lure him to his death. Well, actually, she could believe it. It was almost typical, in fact. She stared at the Lorelei for a long time, thinking, and then the words shot out of her mouth as fast as they popped into her head. Pumpkin, how fast can she swim? And that is the end of chapter 13. Ooh, so what's she gonna do? What's she thinking? You probably know what she's thinking. Alright, let me get my charger because there we go. It's looking like it's gonna need some charging soon. This is gonna be the last chapter I'm gonna do because I want to eat turbo flamas. So not till 10:30 till 10 will I read. Yeah, that should be a good chapter to. Yeah, she's gonna do that. Totally. I love that idea. Love it. All right. Chapter 14. Chasing the Hesperus. They were packed within minutes. If the ship carrying Lucius, Beatrice, and Fabio was still crossing the Dead Sea, they didn't have a moment to lose. May filled a knapsack with supplies she'd found around Pumpkin's mansion. A starlight, a blanket, a compass, a hairbrush, which Pumpkin had insisted on. But when Pumpkin saw the blanket, he shifted from foot to foot, looking uncomfortable. You know, spirits don't get cold. May looked at the blanket, taken by surprise. Right. She pulled it out of the sack and then laced it over Pumpkin's shoulders. We'll need a place to go after we take over the ship. Somewhere we can dock. We're gonna take over the ship? Pumpkin turned paler than the ghostly pale he already was. Oh dear. I don't think there's any other way. Pumpkin considered. Well, there's Portertown. It's the seed of the old ghost stories. Word is that Cleveland hasn't touched it yet. Too prestigious. Spirits love their celebrities too much. Lots of famous souls. It's like the Hollywood of the dead, but it's dangerous. It's close to... Pumpkin's voice trailed off. May knew he meant it was too close to the plateau of despair, and what lay beyond. She nodded, pulling back her long hair and tying it in a knot at the back of her head. We'll have to think about it. Meet you back here in 5 minutes. She hurried down the hall to the telebooth. The telebooth. I'm just gonna say telebooth. Yeah. She hurried down to the hall of the telebooth and stepped inside, closing the door behind her. An envelope appeared in the head over her head. An envelope appeared in the air over her head. She closed her eyes and tried to concentrate completely, mentally addressing the envelope to the Lady of North Farm. A moment later, a piece of paper appeared over her head, awaiting her message. In desperate need of your help. Stop. Please find us. Stop. Maybird. May looked up in the air. Written on the floating piece of paper were all the words she'd just thought to herself. She crossed her fingers and opened the door of the booth, and the message vanished into thin air. She hoped it would find its way. Pumpkin was sitting with the Lorelei, making kissy faces at her. Hey, cutie, he muttered. You are so cute. He looked up at May. I hope she's not luring us to our deaths by agreeing to do this. Kitty sat in a colorful old van parked beside the pool, ads for the Pit of Despair plastered across the surface. He was ready to go. A giant wooden tub loaded in behind him. Pumpkin had strapped a pair of aviator goggles over his eyes, more likely because it looked stylish than to actually help Kitty at all. Still, Kitty licked his chops gamely, looking like a fearless pilot from the 1940s. Now they just had to get to the Dead Sea and hope May's idea worked. Thrills, chills, spills, kills, come to the Pit of Despair. Slowly, they wobbled across the desert. They slowly wobbled across the desert. Is there any way to turn that down? May yelled to Pumpkin. What? He called, cupping his hand to his ear. May peered into the sky nervously. The Pit of Despair mobile was topped with a loudspeaker that wouldn't shut off, as if it wasn't conspicuous enough that they were driving a van covered in animatronic mummies that had a spinning skull with flashing purple eyes for a hood ornament. May was sure vampires would uh, May was sure vampires would appear in the sky at any moment. She looked over her shoulder at the Lorelei, who sat in her tub, grinning at her ambiguously. May could tell why Pumpkin had named her Mona Lisa. Only the city of Ether punctuated the horizon to the south, small and far away already. Its spires soaring as if it were still in this. Its spires soaring as if it were still the city it had been, though a low, dark sky hung above it and gave it a dim, grungy hue. Let me say that again, because I don't feel like I said that right. Yeah, only the city of Ethera punctuated the horizon to the south, small and far away already, its spires soaring as if it were still the city it had been, though a low, dark sky hung above it and gave it a dim, grungy hue. May felt a huge wave of relief as they reached the immense shore of the Dead Sea, stretching as far as the eye could see to the north and south. But as they climbed out of the van, fear of its dark waters replaced her fear of vampires. The treacherous waters was endlessly vacant before them, not a ship on the horizon, and no sign of an opposite shore. With a splash, the Lorelei entered the water. The giant orange raft emblazoned with Pumpkin's face sliced through the sea like a knife, the Lorelei churning furiously up ahead, the sea's hazardous water flying up in their wake. About an hour before, they had lost all sight of land, and now the horizon on every side of them was and black. Rippling, oily and black. May was beginning to suspect that in this vast ocean, the chances of finding their friends were slim to none, and then a tiny speck appeared in the distance ahead of them. May thought she was imagining it at first, but then she looked over at Pumpkin, who looked at it too, biting his fingernails. "Do you think that's it?" he asked. May pulled one of her arrows from her back and held it ready to string her bow. "Maybe. Put Kitty in your sack and tie it on tight." As the speck grew larger, they could see that it was indeed a ship. Whether it was the one they were looking for was a different question. It was a great black galleon, tatty white sails hoisted and blowing in the wind. The Lorelei shot a look back at them and then picked up the speed. They coasted forward, faster and faster. May strung her bow and took aim. The wind screamed in her ears, and she trained her eyes on the deck. They could see ghoulish figures now, moving about the boat, and May could see the ship's name painted on the back, the Hesperus. She gasped. Under the dimness of the sky, against the blackness of the sea, the tiniest glow stood out on the prow, like a lamp burning, a glowing figure. Lucius. A gull standing on the starboard thrust A gull standing on the starboard side thrust out an arm toward them, pointing. Two more appeared at the edge and gazed at them, jumping up and down. May pulled her bow back another inch to fire, just as one of the gulls grabbed Lucius by the scruff of the neck. In that exact moment, May's first arrow flew. The shot was true. It landed square on the gull's chest, and he was turned immediately to stone. He tumbled over backward, Lucius disappearing with him. After that, there was no time to think. In another moment, they were upon the ship. They had just enough time to reach out and grab the ropes hanging off from the lower deck before the raft crashed into the boat's massive flank. They scrambled upward, pulling with all their might, and then they were on board, falling over the rails onto the main deck. Two gulls saw them and clambered forward. Pumpkin let out a scream. Somber Kitty leaped out of his sack and danced tauntingly, moving like a rubber band. May pointed her arrow at the closest goal, which, with the swift shot, she froze to stone immediately. The second just got close enough to reach for her when Kitty jumped on his head, sending him circling and growling and giving May just enough time to string together Let me read that again. The second just got close enough to reach for her when Kitty jumped on his head, sending him circling and growling, and giving May just enough time to string another arrow and shoot, turning to stone. The gull went tumbling off to the side of the boat just as Kitty leaped gracefully onto the railing. A young girl, all in white, emerged from the stairs just behind him, looking baffled, and then her hands flew to her mouth. "Beatrice, look out!" "Finally, she's poppin', fools." "Yeah, she's poppin'. She's poppin' those silvers." Mabe just patched a goal behind her. A tall man with a mustache appeared behind Beatrice. Mamma mia! He yelled. As they watched in amazement, May turned three more goals into stone. Even she was amazed. The arrows went true each time. Pumpkin was running back and forth on the deck, screaming and slapping out blindly with his big floppy hands. Two goals were closing in around him, threading two arrows into her bow quick as a whip and tilting them with her finger in opposite directions. May took them both out at the same time. Without a word, Bee and Fabio ran across the decks to look for something to use as weapons, and May sped toward where she had seen Lucius. She found the stone goal she had first hit, knocked over sideways, and one pale, luminous arm waving at her from the floor beneath him. Lucius! The arms waggled and waved. May could see now that the stone goal still had him tightly in the scruff of the neck. Man, move! Lucius yelled. May pushed hard against the statue, but it didn't budge. Gobble, 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 gobble. May turned, placing one foot protectively on the stone goal as three gulls advanced toward her. She drew her bow and hit the first just as he stepped forward. The other two came to a halt, looked at her, then looked at each other, and jumped over the side of the ship, howling as they went. May stood where she was, poised for the next attack, waiting. For a moment, things were quiet. Being For a moment, things were quiet. Bee and Fabio appeared at her side, holding long planks of wood in their. Sorry, getting distracted. Okay. Sorry. People are outside. And so I get really embarrassed. For a few moments, uh, sorry, I'm gonna have to take a look. Yes. Yeah. I wish I wouldn't get embarrassed when I read aloud, but I do. You know what? I'm gonna keep on reading. It's fine. For a moment, things were quiet. Bee and Fabio appeared by her side, holding long planks of wood in their arms like bats, looking around, unsure. May shot fierce, searching looks in all directions, brushing back her dark hair, which had wildly tumbled out of its knot. Summer Kitty appeared in the crow's nest above them and meowed as if to say, "All clear." "Pumpkin?" she called nervously. "Present!" Pumpkin emerged from inside the barrel that stood right beside her. "Is there anyone else back there?" she asked Fabio. He disappeared down the stairs, then reappeared a moment later, shaking his head. Beatrice stood gaping at May. She looked the same as the day May left. Long white dress, blue sash, pale and spectral and Victorian. She drifted toward her unsurely. Is it really you? You're so tall." May nodded. "It's me." Bee's tapered white hands flew to her mouth, and tears of joy welled up in her eyes. In another moment, she wrapped her arms around May and was holding her tight. Suddenly, they were both tackled from the side and wrapped up in Fabio's arms. He hugged them like he hugged them like a daddy long legs. "It's a maid to come and save us. I knew you would come. I knew you would come." Hold on. I'm gonna adjust myself because I haven't done that. Oh shit! What the fuck? What am I saying? Where was I? "It's a May come to save us. I knew you would come. I knew you would come." Sorry, I keep on saying that so weird. "I knew you would have come." Or some. Also, there's a fucking smudge on my glasses and it's bugging me. Okay. There we go. They're back in their rooms. It's a May come to save us. I knew you would come. He reached out his gangly arms and pulled Pumpkin into the hug too. May felt relief wash through her. Here she was, finally, among friends, among the people who believed her journey to the ever after was real, believed in her, understood her best. All her years back in Brewery Swamp, May had forgotten how this felt. But May, but Beatrice pulled back. You're so cold. They all looked down at Lucius. He was stuck to his side, looking in the direction of the sea, his cheek flushed against the door. May knelt beside him for a moment and steadied the stone hand that gripped him. I don't know how to get you out of this, she said. Karate chop the stone, Pumpkin suggested. Mew? Kitty agreed, appearing beside her, only to be immediately scooped up in Fabio's passionate embrace. That might break his neck, said Beatrice. Broken neck is no big deal, Fabio offered hopefully. He wear a nice necktie? Look handsome. Lucius let out a groan. His face had gone bright red. He was clearly frustrated. Gargle! May bit her lip, thinking. She crossed the deck, scooped up a bucket, and then found a rope. While everyone looked on bewildered, she lowered the bucket into the Dead Sea, so ever so carefully, raised it again once it was full. Biting her tongue, she lowered it to the deck, as if it were a bomb. Watch out, she whispered, grabbing a rag from the deck and dipping it gingerly into the water, so that her fingers remained far from the side that was wet. She then carried the dripping cloth toward Lucius, and the others clearing to either side to let her pass. Arr! Lucius protested. May carefully dangled the cloth over the gull's stone arm, so that one tiny droplet of water tumbled onto the surface. She whipped the cloth away with a magician-like flourish. At the same moment, the stone gull disappeared completely, no doubt reappearing immediately in South Place, miles below them. Lucius lay curled in a ball now, utterly free. He rolled onto his back, rubbing his neck, and then he looked up at her, his blue eyes wide. Lucius, like everyone else, was the same age he'd been when she'd left. 13. His usually pinkish cheeks were red from exertion, but he was still as filled with soft white light as ever. He wore his old-fashioned school uniform, gray jacket and pants, and a maroon tie. You're dead, May said softly, laying on the cloth on top of a nearby barrel. Beatrice gasped, her hands flying to her heart. Fabio cleared his throat, uncomfortable. Lucius was the only one not distressed by the news. He shook his head. What was it? What was I? Oh yeah, Lucius was the only one not distressed by the news. He shook his head, standing up and rubbing the arm he'd been lying on. I was going to say older. He cleared his throat as if he was embarrassed. Yeah, May swallowed. She reached out a hand and he looked at it, then grasped it to shake it. And grasped it to shake. She didn't know why she didn't hug him. Nice to see you again, Lucius, she said. Likewise. Lucius bowed, as if remembering some long-lost manners that didn't fit him anymore. Of course. He cleared his throat and let her hand drop. I was planning our escape from the ship. He grabbed a spear from the deck and cut a dashing figure. It didn't look like it, Bee said. Lucius scowled at her, his glow turning a brownish and angry color. Nonsense, he said matter-of-factly, holding up the spear so he could expertly examine the sharpness of its tip with his fingers. Girls are just too foolish to know when they're about to be saved. And I suppose it makes no difference that a girl just saved you, Beatrice retorted, drifting to May's side and looping her arm around hers companionably. Lucius looked at May, squinted and blushed, then went back to examining the spear. May, what happened? How did you die? Beatrice asked, overjoyed and overwrought at the same time. Guys? Pumpkin said. She's even prettier than before, isn't she, Captain? Added B. Lucius rolled his eyes and did a few more fearsome poses with the spear. Captain Fabio nodded enthusiastically, swirling his mustache. Guys? Pumpkin tapped May on the shoulder. Beauty like the moon over Sicily in September, Fabio exclaimed. I got a poem that goes, Rock! They both turned to look at Pumpkin, who'd screamed at the top of his lungs. Sure enough, they were being pulled straight toward a giant, craggy rock, slicing into the water surface. A beautiful nude woman lay sunbathing on the rock surface, waving at them. May had a moment to glance over to the side of the boat, where the Lorelei backstroked, grinning at her, her rope tied to the bow of the ship. Lucius lunged for the wheel. May grabbed her arrows and shot one right through the rope that the Lorelei was using to pull them. Then she fell on the wheel next to Lucius. As they worked furiously to turn the ship, May could hear Pumpkin up ahead, calling to the beautiful woman on the rocks. Hey there! Do you know who I am? Did you see Drifty dancing too? The guy in the band with the cabana scene? The guy in the band at the cabana scene? Fabio perched at the very prow of the boat, standing tall and pointing left at like a sea captain or a hunting dog. As if pointing was very important. Left! He shouted. The ship came down slowly. They watched breathlessly as its prow guided just left of the rocks, and then passed smoothly out of harm's way. There was a collective exaltation of relief along the deck. Everyone but Lucius, who was still staring, leaned to peer over the side at the disaster they had just averted. The rock and its beautiful sunbather got smaller and smaller behind them. Wow, how would you like to be shipwrecked on a rock? May said, gazing at its numerous spiky, deadly outcroppings and the vast and empty sea that surrounded it. That wasn't a rock, May Beebe replied softly. That was the Isle of the Water Demons. Pumpkin trapezed back along the deck as the isle drifted away, dazzled. They looked friendly enough, he said wistfully. The bikini-clad Lorelei lit up. As if in reply, hundreds of lights came on just under the surface of the water around her. May's stomach turned sickly as she realized that they were all demons too, and she thought of the fate that they had just avoided. Her heart skipped a beat. Well, it would have if it had still been beating. And that is the end of chapter 14. Thank you for listening. My jaw hurts now. Bye-bye.